Transforming Transportation 2021. We start day 2 with the Vice President for Infrastructure for the World Bank Group, Marta Job. Marta, good to see you. Where should we start?
Good morning, Femi. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those who are in a different time zone. It's really my pleasure to welcome you to day 2 of Transforming Transportation 2021. Yesterday was a great session, and our president, Malpass, said clearly that mobility is essential for social development and economic growth. It's currently on unsustainable course, unfortunately. Today, transport agenda must address 4 key challenges. Transport that is inclusive, safe, green, and efficient. Making transport sustainable is an enormous challenge, but result must be transformative. Let me give you some examples. A more resilient transport infrastructure will significantly reduce the catastrophic human and fiscal losses due to extreme weather, especially in low-income countries. Better farm-to-market connectivity in Africa, for instance, could make the continent self-sufficient in food and create a 1 trillion regional food market in 2030. Imagine food issues addressed totally in Africa. Halving road fatalities and injuries in countries like India and Thailand and sustaining it over 24 years could translate into an additional 14 to 22% per capita income growth over the 2014 levels due to effects such as increased life expectancy and more labor participation. To address these many challenges, governments, international communities, the private sector cannot afford just to be spectators. We need to act, to plan. The World Bank is committed to working with the world top transport stakeholder in developing practical policy recommendations to build the transportation system of the future. We are very lucky today to have one of the great specialists in this area and great policymakers and leaders through the world. They are imagining and realizing cities where good policies and new technology drastically reduce both air and noise pollution, where the blue skies revealed by COVID lockdown have a chance of becoming the norm even after the pandemic. As more people move to cities and incomes grow in developing countries, decarbonizing transport has become essential to control climate change and make our city livable. Addressing these issues, such as the importation of unsafe and polluting used cars and pure fuel standards in many developing countries, are ways forward. These measures that we are having today have a vision of universal access to well-planned and affordable public transportation, such as BRT system, biking, walking options, providing safe, sustainable, and convenient options to everyone, linking communities to job, education while reducing commuting time and increasing health benefit. In the future that is being built, road infrastructure is being constructed with the needs not just of motorists in mind, but also pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, and who currently account for 89% or 49%, of all road traffic deaths. This will be a future in which cities and transport leave no one behind, taking into account the specific needs of women and girls and creating conditions for achieving zero fatalities and net zero emission and air pollution. For us at the World Bank, mobility is a lifeblood of communities. We stand with cities and countries in the road to sustainable mobility for all. With transport, we have the power not only to generate prosperity, but also to improve the quality of people's life. Transport is not just about building roads, it's about empowering people, improving cities and communities, and propelling economies. I really look forward to hearing the insight of these great leaders and mayors who are implementing innovation and implementing new policies in their respective cities. Back to you, Femi.
Thank you so much, Marta. Marta, I know the team for Transforming Transportation are so excited to have mayors in this conference because mayors do stuff, like they do the real work. What does it take to entice mayors who are so busy doing all of their jobs around the world, particularly at this really crisis point for pretty much every city in every region. What does it take to bring them to the table? What did you do to get them into our conference?
It's happening. 10 years ago, I was in Brazil. I was director for the World Bank in Brazil. And there were a big meeting in Sao Paulo around climate change in cities. So the mayors have already built a coalition to address the issues of climate change. And they were among the first to leave the starting blocks. And what they did when they were discussing these issues was to focus on mobility, mass transport. That's why the World Bank, for instance, in a city like Sao Paulo, have heavily invested in metro systems to ensure that the poor are connected at a lower price and in a sustainable way. Actually, one of our studies in Sao Paulo shows that it had a huge impact on income generation for the poorest and was able to change their life. So the mayors are people who are representing people. Mayors are leaders who are thinking first about their direct constituencies. So the livelihood of the citizen is something that is at the center of the agenda of their daily life, and transportation is something that when you live in a city which is hitting you the first, if transportation is not good, you are not very happy as a citizen.
You did an excellent warm-up job for our mayors from around the world. Marta Diop is the Vice President for Infrastructure for the World Bank Group. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Femi. Thank you so much.
Take care. Delegates, you're coming in from all over the world. I'm going to greet you. I can't greet every single country, but I'm going to have a try. Tanzania, El Salvador, Brazil, Nigeria, France, Turkey, delegates, hello. Thank you for joining us virtually. Angola, the UK, Netherlands, Venezuela, Uganda, India, so many more countries. Delegates, thank you for joining from all over the world. You're not just watching this conference. I'm not going to allow you to do that. I would like you to take part, inspire us, push us, challenge us. You see that little comment section on the platform. Put your comments, your questions in there. I will do my best to roll those thoughts into the show. It's not a show, it's a session, but it's a show for you. So now, let's begin with session number 3. As Marta Diop said a little bit earlier, mayors are so critical to where we are right now, where cities are moving forward and sustainable mobility. And so I'm really delighted to bring this panel to you. We are going to go from all over the world. So I am going to say hello to the mayors. The mayors will actually greet you. So let us start. Where should we start? In Albania. Hello, Mayor. It is nice to see
Hi,
you.
Femi.
Welcome. Welcome. Tell the world who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Marion Velley. I'm the mayor of Terán. I'm the 42nd mayor. I've been in the job for 6 years, but it already feels like 6 days because every day is exciting when you're the mayor. And as we know, the bucket stops with the mayor. You know, you get big governments who are saying they're going to do this for the climate, but it's the mayor who has to plant the trees and make sure he deals with the floods and make sure that we survive crisis. And I just want to make a first remark because I see we have some colleagues from China. And I love the word crisis in Chinese because there's only two brushstrokes. One means danger, and the other one means opportunity. And I think this is a great time, of course, of danger, but also a great time of opportunities.
I like the way you think, Mayor. Thank you for joining us. We go now to Brazil and Sao Paulo. Hello, Mayor. So good to see you. Your staff speak very highly of you. Introduce yourself to our global audience. Nice to have you.
Hi, hello everybody. Best regards here from São Paulo, Brazil. I was deputy mayor but the mayor resigned to run for governor. So I've been mayor for 2 years and a half, and last December I was reelected for 4 more years as mayor of São Paulo. We have just started this new term, full of enthusiasm to keep with our investment in a city committed with all international discussion of reducing green gas emission. Even though the federal government here in Brazil is not taking care of this issue, the cities in Brazil are doing a lot of effort to commit with this reduction, a lot of investments in new public transportation, and I'm very excited to discuss this with all of you.
All right. Mayor Covas, what was your face like when you found out that you had run re-election during a pandemic? Do that face for me right now. Okay, yeah, that is the joy, the joy of being re-elected. Excellent. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get speaking to you about what you've been doing in Sao Paulo during a pandemic that got you re-elected at the same time. The mayor of Maputo. It is so nice to see you. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, Mayor.
Yes, I hear you.
Go ahead.
Mayor Maputo.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Iglesias da Conceição Comish, and Mayor of Maputo on February 7, 2019, for my second mandate as a result of municipal elections held in Maputo. Prior to that, I was serving as a member of parliament, minister at the office of the President of the Republic for Economic and Social Affairs, Minister of Finance, Governor Central Bank of Mozambique, and chairman of the board of directors of Banco Popular de Desenvolvimento, long time ago.
Thank you so much, Mayor. It's so good to have you. All right, and we go to Bogota. Hello, Madam Mayor. So nice to see you. Please introduce yourself to our international audience.
Thank you so much. Greetings from Bogota, Colombia. I'm Claudia Lopez. I'm the first female mayor of Bogota, the large city of 8 million people. We've been here, leading with the pandemic and other issues in Bogota, trying to strengthen our public system of health, and also trying to reinvigorate our economy and the employment that has suffered equally as much as health during this pandemic.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking forward to hearing more from you in just a moment. And now we head to China, to the Executive Vice Mayor of Shenzhen. Executive Vice Mayor, good to see you. Introduce yourself to our global audience.
Honorable coordinators, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm a Chinese. I speak in Chinese. My name is Liu Qingshen. I am the Executive Vice Mayor of Shenzhen. Because of the COVID pandemic, even we seeing each other, we seeing that you are virtually, and we will not be able to hold your hands, hug you, and we can only communicate with each other in not a face-to-face way, but in the distance. However, we still try to work this all together. Shenzhen is a city that with enormous traffic, and we'd also explored how to govern the transportations and how to optimize the transformation trend. And for examples, in terms of how to use a bicycle, electronic bicycles, how to run oversized cities. And we would like to learn from everyone, and would like to build a more green and more economical transportation in Shenzhen City. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Vice Mayor. We look forward to hearing more from you and hopefully sharing your expertise and the other mayors' expertise with you. So we are talking about the insights of these leaders from cities from all over the world. The challenges are huge for their cities and for their citizens. Let's take a look. So, Mayors, I want to get your first unvarnished description of what it was like to cope with a global pandemic, the kind of pandemic that most of us have never experienced before. Let's start in Terán. Marion,
Well,
what did you do?
hi.
What was that like?
Yeah, well, clearly it was a shock. And for us, it was a double shock because we were just recovering from two consecutive earthquakes, one in September 2019 and the other one in December 2019. We lost thousands of homes, over 50 lives. So it was a double slammer, I think, if you'd allow the word. So we were just recovering. And, when you have two major earthquakes, you have a lot of subsequent aftershocks. So with the earthquake, we were telling everybody to get out as soon as possible. And with the pandemic, we were telling everybody to get in as soon as possible. So it literally became a little psychological mind game in what were we supposed to do when you have two crises that overlap. But we're resilient people. And I think with a bit of creativity, figure out a way to keep going. The country and the city did not suffer economic loss, so we still kept our economic growth, but we just learned to do things a bit more creatively. Work from home, expand our bike network, carry on with our 15-minute city project, and I think we came out better because of it.
Mayor, that's extraordinary because I think a lot of cities will be wondering, how did you not lose money when you had to shut down? How's that possible?
Well, because of the reconstruction project following the earthquake, construction was one of the few industries that kept going. And because the reconstruction effort opened so many jobs actually out in the nature, we were able to combine hard work in the outdoors for the reconstruction effort, which gets most people to work not in closed rooms but in open air. And in the meantime, migrated a lot of our bureaucracy to work indoors. So what actually appeared as a double crisis also, like I said, became our opportunity. And because of the construction boom in the city, we were able to stay afloat. Probably not the economic growth we would have liked, but I think given the circumstances, we probably fared much better than the rest of our neighbors.
Extraordinary. Mercovas, I am so fascinated by what you did in Sao Paulo. You created trouble in Brazil. You got yourself into trouble. Starting off with lockdown, not lockdown light, like I've seen in many cities around the world, but a serious, hardcore lockdown. Explain what happened and how you did it.
It had been very difficult to deal with this pandemic. We have a saying here in Brazil, everybody here loves soccer, as you all know, and every World Cup everybody became a soccer coach. In this pandemic, everybody became an epidemiologist. Everybody had new ideas on how to deal with the problem. But we need to listen the people that studied their whole lives to deal with this case. It's not simple to implement some measures, some actions that deal with people can work and people can't work. We face a lot of difficulties, but we implement a kind of lockdown, prohibiting some activities. Hospitals and every hospitals, restaurants were allowed to continue to sell. We spent almost 3 months here in São Paulo with 78% of the people in their homes. We helped a lot because in this period we could deliver 8 new public hospitals here in São Paulo. So everybody that went to the hospital was taken care. Nobody had to wait to be inside the hospital. We didn't have images of people staying in their house, even though we have 12 million people here in the city of São Paulo. We could take care of everybody who sick for treatment here in the city of São Paulo. We still are fighting this pandemic, but we think that now with the vaccine, we are facing a new horizon, and maybe in the end of this year, this is something that we could celebrate the end of the war against coronavirus.
Mier, transport in Sao Paulo is so important. It's, as you said, 12 million people. It's a big area. It's a busy area. So at the height of the pandemic, what did Sao Paulo look like? And then how did essential workers just physically get around?
We have a fleet of almost 13,000 buses here in São Paulo. Even though we have a decrease of the number of passengers, we maintain almost 100% of the fleet in the streets. This helped us to not have images of buses with a lot of people, and a survey that was implemented by our health secretary shows that the proportion of people infected that use public transportation is the same amount of people that don't use public transportation. So here in São Paulo, the buses were not a cause of people get the coronavirus.
I want to move to Marion Lopez and think about Bogota, which is really well known for cycling. And people are talking about your cycling programs. People have been talking about your cycling programs on day one of Transforming Transportation Conference 2021. I am wondering whether that commitment to cycling helped with handling transports being impacted by COVID-19, Madam Mayor.
Well, as you know, Bogota is well known to be a worldwide capital of biking. We have the largest network of any, mid-income city in the world of 550 kilometers of cycleways in our city. During this pandemic, we decided to add 85 more kilometers of cycleways in our city. And we promote decisively. I personally love bikes. When I was senator, promote the law to put incentives to promote the use of biking and as a mode of public transportation in our city. In last year, with all these promotion policies, improvement of cyclo infrastructure, we were able to double the number of daily travels in bike in Bogota, from 6% of our daily travels to 12% of our daily travels in Bogota. People understand that biking is healthier, is more safely during this pandemic to protect yourself from, reduce the risk of contagion of, for example, in mass public transit or any other modes of transportation in our city. Unfortunately, precisely in the last year, in which we doubled the daily travels in bike, also bikes were stolen in our city. So we are now improving not only cycle infrastructure, but also public safety in the cycleways. And unfortunately, since last year, the stolen bikes has been decreasing, and this year is also decreasing. So we need to improve also in that aspect of public safety in the use of bikes. But at the same time, Bogota, unfortunately, as much as has improved and lead biking in the world, has probably the oldest massive transportation system in Latin America. We're only building the first metro line in Bogota at the moment, which is incredible in a city which is as large as 8 million people. So we are now working with the national government to increase the number of metro lines in the next 10 years, to build at least 3 metro lines in the next 10 years. At the same moment, we're improving and building green corridors. Green corridors are corridors in which we have zero emissions because we have public space for pedestrians, we have bike lanes, cycleways, and public transportation is 100% electric. In fact, the last year, we bought 1,002 electric buses. We complete a fleet of 4,500 electric buses in our city, which makes Bogota the first in Latin America in have the largest fleet so far. We are sort of competing with Santiago de Chile to be the first place in Latin America at the moment, because we are always also renewing the public transportation buses fleet. So with all these measures, we're trying to make more sustainable, to adapt Bogota much more to the climate change challenge, and to build a public transportation that is healthier during the pandemic and after, and that is sustainable and more has more quality for the way of life in our city.
Madam Mayor, I am curious about the best decision you feel that you made as Mayor of Bogota regarding transport last year.
Well, undoubtedly was to increase in 85 kilometers the cycle infrastructure network, the cycleways in our city. This is a big fight. I mean, you need to take into account that we are in an 8 million city in which high-income people used to have cars, and mid and low-income people used to have bikes. So this is not only a transportation issue, this is an issue. You know? We are not putting cycleways and cycle routes in, only parallel streets. We are using and taking lanes in the main avenues of our city, reducing the lanes for who are contributing to emissions, and improving the transportation for pedestrians, which account for 20% of daily travels in our city, and for bike users, which accounts for 12% of travels, daily travels in our city. So this is as much as a sustainable issue, a transportation issue, but it's also a courageous political issue to try to level the use of public space in a more equitable way between different modes of transportation, giving priority to the safest, cleanest
Okay.
ways of
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Kamish, Mayor of Maputo, you are having to deal with informal transport as well as formal, more traditional forms of public transport as well. So when and while you're managing a global pandemic, can you explain to us what considerations you have to make for your citizens?
Thank you very much. This COVID-19 creates many problems. We have to adapt ourselves to this situation in terms of organizing. Do you hear me?
We hear you
Hello?
perfectly. Please continue. Yes, ma'am, we hear you. Please continue.
Okay. Mean that we have to organize ourselves not only in the capital city of Maputo, the capital of Mozambique, in terms of markets, as well as the shops and transport terminals, as well as different places, so that we could follow all the regulations coming from the World Organization for Health and also the authorities of the health in the city and Mozambique in general. In such a way that during this time we have in Mozambique a cumulative case of more than 14,000 infected, but active are at this stage 15,500 and death around 215. In the case of Maputo, we have a cumulative case which represent 47% of the total country, and active cases which represent 53% of the total country, and the death which represent 80%. So this is a very big challenge for us, and measures have been taken in order to reverse the situation. On what concerns the transportation, I would like to say that in terms of our background, it's important to know that Maputo city, we are more than 1.1 million inhabitants, which is in the course with the census of 2017. But considering other municipalities around, we are serving namely two municipalities of Matola and Buani, as well as the district of Maracanã. We are around more than 2,200,000 people. And there is a social.
Mayor of Maputo, we are losing your connection a little bit, so I'm
For
going to ask
schools.
you to. Let me just see if we can hear any more. Mayor Kamish, I'm going to ask you to, technical term here, refresh your browser, and then I will come right back to you because we're having trouble hearing from you right now. Sorry about that connection. I'm looking forward to hearing from you once again.
Okay.
Just refresh the browser and then come back. I don't hear you right now. I'm going to take you backstage. We've got a virtual backstage, and then come back, and we'll continue our conversation in just a moment. All right. So remember, if you have questions for the mayors, I want to hear from them first of all. I want you to hear from them first of all, and then shoot your questions to me from all different parts of the world. What would you like to pick their brains about? They have managed major parts of the world, major cities, and they have expertise. They may not have had expertise at the beginning, they definitely have expertise now. I want to go to the Executive Vice Mayor of Shenzhen. Executive Vice Mayor, if you could describe the transport situation in your city right now, how would we know that you are in a global pandemic? What does it look like? How have you managed the pandemic in Shenzhen?
Okay, it is my great honor that I have the opportunity to give this brief introduction. Okay, I think the city that I'm living in, Shenzhen. So if I can give you the story of Shenzhen and how it develops, it will be my great honor. Shenzhen locates at the south part of China. It is divided by the Pearl River City, and we are bordering Hong Kong to the south. Foreigners will call Shenzhen a city that burned with a shining armor, because it's a city that with only a very short development time and amount 4,000 economic zones. Shenzhen as economic zone, special economic zone, is one of the best ones that are recognized by the world as the fastest development city. Shenzhen, about a few decades ago, to only have 30,000 people. However, today, we have more than 20 million actual populations under jurisdiction. A few decades ago, we've only have 27 million USD. However, for now, we have about 430 billion yuan of economic aggregation in total. Among 20 million people in our populations, the average age is under 30. We are a very young city. Although our total land is less than 2,000 square meters, however, I think we've created a miracle in the world in terms of city development. That's why we are a magic city. We live in a magic city. And I would like to extend my invitations to all the delegates in this panel discussion. Come to Shenzhen, please, to see it with your own eyes. And now we concentrate on the transportation systems and how we transform transportation in this small but big city. We have 3.5 million taxis in this small city. And our infrastructure in terms of transportation is a well-integrated system. In 2017, we've realized integrated public bus transportation systems with about 1,700 buses within the system. We'd also realize the electronic central control systems in terms of deliberations and operations of this public transportation. And in the meantime, we've also moved from the normal public transportation systems that with bus and private cars, we've extended the horizontal of public transportation that includes commutes, normal commuting, as well as the shuttle buses that in between big companies and private companies. So we are a city with fresh air, and we've said before, in terms of how we realized the how we do the green and low carbon travel, how we realize the green and low carbon transportation system, because we encourage private and public sectors in our cities to redesign their transportation systems to use more green energies and green transportations and green cars. We have to say that we've met lots of difficulties in realizing this system. However, we've tried our best. We built about 411 kilometers of metro system, and we've said that the cities is with about 20 million people, and it's that's a big size city, and therefore, when we encountered COVID, we need an overall resilient transportation system in order for us to have it properly. So how we maintained the safety, and how we realized COVID control, and how we helped maintain the safety and effectiveness of our citizens. Under the guidance of the party central committees, state councils, and the provincial committee, we've tried to on one hand, keep the running of the city effectively and reliably. On the meantime, we've set up a sturdy, quick response systems to maintain the good running of the city. And we've also we have a controlled testing systems, and we'd ask every citizen to wear masks. And in both hands, that's why we helped the safetyness of our citizens. Now, throughout this year's governing, as well as the control and prevention measures, we can see that the organization systems, the governing systems, along with the transportation systems, are doing great. For metro commute, in the peak time, we have about 5 million people in the peak times traveling through our metro system at the same time. However, we've never had one incident of spread, and we never have one incident of COVID that is spreading through this travel method. That's how we have this responsive and resilient control and governing over the transportation system that will help the control of COVID pandemic. And we'd also built over 200 kilometers of the cycle track to help the citizens to go for a greener travel method. Therefore, we have a few million bicycles in Shenzhen, and a lot of people will choose to cycle around city. And therefore, by doing this, we've realized a greener and low carbon travel. And that's why I would like to introduce this type of strategy and thought to you. And we hope that we can learn between each other, between our experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Executive Mayor. I am going to switch up the speed and the pace of our conversation, because now that you've met all the mayors, I am going to ask the mayors to do something that they're often not asked to do because they're mayors and they're in charge, which is be brief. And we are going to do speed rounds. My first thought, Mayor of Terán, what was the worst day for you regarding public transport? Because you were saying that you've done so well economically, that you've survived pretty well. What was the day when you thought, I wish I wasn't Mayor of Terán?
Well, it was the day number one of the lockout, which I think was, towards the end of March. The city completely shut down, and we then realized clearly, this is COVID, attacks mostly the lungs, But we also realize it also affects mental health. And I think just the same amount of people suffering from being indoors, not being able to go out. So the challenge was, how do we prioritize very rapidly? So one thing is, we provided free transport for essential workers, and how we define essential workers, the medical, the police, and the supermarkets. And then we established a huge volunteer work called Adopt a Grandparent. And the idea was, since they are the more vulnerable and they are the ones who are, should be kept protected, we organized a huge youth network where we daily made rounds to between 30 and 40,000 homes, where we had already identified either someone with a disability or a lonely elderly person, where we send medical supplies, where we send food, and we had daily checkup calls with one of our young volunteers. So setting up that army within 24 hours was a great answer to probably the most difficult day of my life.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that with us. I feel like we're now going into a therapy session. Mayor Kovas, I have a question for you. And this is directly about Sao Paulo. And this question comes from Gail Labrise. How does Sao Paulo work with the state agency running the metro to enforce social distancing and prepare for future epidemics? Many trains get crowded at peak rush hour.
Here, the state runs the subway and the trains, and the city hall runs the buses. So here we maintain all the fleet in São Paulo, even though we have reduced in the number of passengers. We enforce them to use masks in buses. And also the state had the same measure in the subway and the trains. And as I said, the public health secretary conducted a survey showing that the proportion of people that use public transportation here in São Paulo that was contained with the coronavirus is the same proportion that people that don't use public transportation. So we guarantee that public transportation is not a way of people get infected here in São Paulo.
Thank you very much. Mayor Lopez, I have a question for you, directly for you again. We continue our speedy responses to these questions. In managing such a large fleet of buses or controlling such an extensive network of cycling lines, what challenge do you have in managing data for these infrastructures?
Well, we're building, in fact, we created recently our analytical data agency, which I think is going to be one of the most important instruments for public policy in Bogota, to collect data and to use data for improving different services, among others, public transportation in different ways, so that people can know what are the best routes to use, either bikes or buses, to move from one way to another, where they can find places to park their bicis or other modes of transportation, and also to know how transportation is changing during the pandemic. It has changed a lot. A lot of people are working from home or studying from home, changing the way they move in the city, not only which mode of transportation they use, but how frequently they go, the time during the day that they go out of their homes, the number of travels that they do per day. So I think public transportation and in general transportation is changing radically and probably positively during the pandemic. We have heard the last year, for example, the best air quality last year, because we reduced the travels using oil and fuels in our city, and we increased the travels in public and clean modes of transportation. So using all this data and trying to find what are the trends and in destinations, in modes of travels, in daily travels, I think is going to help us a lot in planning in better ways the regional, city, transportation system.
I did see at the beginning of that question, Mayor Kova smiling, and I'm trying to work out why was he smiling as I was asking that question. Go ahead, Mayor. Articulate that smile. What was going on?
The difficulties that all the mayors have to deal with is the same, even though some cities is in the south hemisphere, the north hemisphere. It's impressive how every effort and every complaint of the people is the mayors that have to deal with. So even though we have different structures, even though we have different countries, even though we have different laws, the cities are the closest to the people, and all the mayors around the world. And it's impressive. All meeting that I have, I'm still shocked with this.
And also, it's almost like the mayor is there to fix the problems. Like, Mayor, I've got this problem. I don't know if it's a broken water pipe or it's new cycle lanes or it's how do I not get COVID on the bus? But the mayor, you are that person, and it requires a special kind of leadership. I'm going to come back to that, but I want to tell you, Mem of Maputo is a former economist. I think once an economist, always an economist. He is a former finance minister as well. So I have a fantastic question for you, Mayor Kamish. We have several questions, and this is from Milena, on managing public transport systems that are financial or have financial or economical difficulties. What are some of your strategies to access additional financing? Mayor Kamish.
Thank you very much. First of all, I have to inform that COVID-19 is having a severe impact of the sustainability of the transportation system, as well as on the health of our citizens. And the situation is characterized by over-occupancy. So we now trying to find ways in order to solve the problem. As the information we have is currently there is been a reduction of 5% of private investment compared with 2015, as well a 39% drop of passengers in each trip compared to a normal situation due to biosafety measures imposed on the transportation sector. We have challenges vis-a-vis the future in terms of the number of private vehicles entering into the city of Maputo, causing traffic jams, of parking spaces leading to invasion of walkways and increased gas emissions, as well as improved mobility in the city center and surrounding neighborhoods. We have to convince people to leave their vehicles home and opt for a public transportation system as long as it proves to be safe, comfortable, and reliable with regard to the time schedules. In terms of solutions in the case of Maputo, we will adopt a massive and reliable transportation system by modernizing the vehicles and discouraging the use of private vehicles. We know that it's not easy, but we have to find the ways for the
So, Mayor, because I'm going to push you, Mayor, because you being a finance minister and a former minister, you know how to evade questions. So I'm going to push you just a little bit, if I may. Two things. How do you get additional financing? Just very swiftly, because this was the speed round, Mayor.
Yeah.
How do you get additional
Yes,
financing?
yes.
I know as a finance minister, you know ways, you have your methods. Very briefly, can you just say, so that it can help our audience watching around the world, how would a former finance minister get extra financing for transport? Give us strategies.
Then we work closely with multilateral institutions the World Bank. I am here because I was invited by the World Bank to be part on this discussion. And
Right.
we also think on PPPs, public-private investment, as well in certain case of partnership, which will lead us in order to find a proper solution for our transport system, namely for the metropolitan area, the introduction of surface metro system, which is we hope that that will be possible with some partners we have already invited to work with us here. And within this city, the introduction of urban suspended taxis shuttle, for instance, the food train system, which is another way in order to serve the citizens of Maputo, people every day, and not interfering with the design in the established
Thank you.
roads and avenues
Thank you
within
so
the
much.
town.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Okay.
I'm going to push on because I have so many mayors here and I have to keep moving around the world. I have a great, and this is a speed question, Executive Vice Mayor of Shenzhen. And this is the idea about flexible working conditions. And if you're expecting a significant reduction in public transport ridership in Shenzhen, are you seeing the impact of COVID-19 reducing the number of people, not just now, but in the future, who feel comfortable on public transport? Executive Vice Mayor Shenzhen, this is a brief response, please. Over to you.
Thank you. What happened in Shenzhen is, during the pandemic, yes, there is a reduction of public transportation passengers, and the focus of public transportation also shifted. However, for now, after we have the controlled measure in place, level of passengers in the public transportation has revived to the post-pandemic level. And we'd also have creative measures in place. Because China has a great pandemic controlling system, therefore, the mobility of our essential workers as well as other citizens has come back to the level post-pandemic. We have 20 million people, as I said. And there are only 488 people who contracted COVID-19 in the past years, and only 3 people who have passed away. Therefore, our public transportations actually did not interfere in terms of differed in terms of the passenger level. However, in other perspective, we do actually have a different perspective in terms of how we mobilize our citizens. For example, we're putting more thoughts in kind of more economic or more scientific thinkings in terms of how we arrange public transport. And we've advocated, we promote more of our citizens to use greener methods, for example, cycle around the city, and that's one of our strategies. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we were talking a little bit earlier about leadership and what kind of leadership your mayor needs to be able to do. Mayor Kovas was grinning earlier because he's like, these mayors around the world, they all have the same issue I have. I am very curious about what from your background, what skills that you had that made you be a pandemic mayor. What did you draw on? This is a one-sentence answer from each of the mayors. Let's see if they can do it. Mayor Kovas, what were the qualities from your background, your experience, your personal life, your professional life that made you a pandemic mayor and you got re-elected during a pandemic as well? Go ahead, your one sentence.
First of all, be patient to listen to everybody. but we had deal with other problems here in São Paulo previously, like a building that took fire and like a bridge that fell down, like floods here in São Paulo. So we have to be prepared to face some crisis and listen to everybody, especially that have a lot to offer, people that have contribution to give to the city hall. We need to know that we are not superheroes.
Mayor, all the other mayors are not going to give me a sentence if you don't give me a sentence, and then we're going to fall off the edge of our section. So I love that sentence. Bring it to a close. Wrap it up.
Well,
I'm never going to be able to go to Sao Paulo now.
If you can deal with you, we can deal with a crisis also.
That is good. That I feel like that might be the campaign. That might have been the campaign motto. Mayor Lopez, in a sentence, what qualities did you have to make you a pandemic mayor?
To be patient, to listen to everybody.
This is for Mayor Lopez.
Exactly.
Mayor Kovas, you are done, and thank you very much. That was excellent. Mayor Lopez, for you in Bogota.
Well, I think three things have helped me throughout this crisis. The first, I am a woman. I'm a caretaker by definition in my life. I am the oldest of 6 siblings, so I know what it is to take care of a large family.
Excellent.
And I have a PhD in political science. I come from science.
My goodness, all right.
And I think these three things together help me throughout this crisis.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Kamish. What were the qualities or quality that made you a pandemic mayor in a sentence, please?
Yes, is to have a good team. And to build a good team, it's not easy. You have to choose in every areas. In the case of 19, I have to have good doctors who work closely with me. In issues of environment, the same on urban areas, and on transport. And we work as a team, and very good and strong team. Thank you very much.
That's good. I'm sure your team are very happy that you said that. Executive Vice Mayor of Shenzhen, in a word, in a sentence, what was the quality that made you a pandemic mayor?
Have a leadership strong and vital. Have the responsibility structure mechanism in place from top to bottom.
Very good. Thank you so much. And finally, Mayor of Terán, the qualities that made you a pandemic mayor. Go ahead.
Well, I've seen it all in this last 6 years. I've seen floods, I've seen snowstorms in the Mediterranean, I've seen earthquakes and the pandemic. So what I learned is to keep my cool and treat every day like once in 100 years opportunity, because it has been so.
Wow. Thank you, mayors, executive vice mayors, for sharing your experience, stories from all over the world. We really appreciate you. Delegates, I have one more surprise. We are going to Istanbul, Turkey, to speak with the Mayor of Istanbul. Mr. Mayor, welcome to Transforming Transportation.
Dear Vice President, honorable colleagues, first of all, I would like to say that I'm very happy to share the experience of Istanbul with you today in this important roundtable event. The COVID-19 pandemic, which affects all areas of life, also changes the routines, expectations, and priorities of public transportation. For example, infection risk has become one of the most important parameters for people's choice of public transportation. That's why we have seen an increase in private car ownership and usage in Istanbul as much as everywhere else. But on the other hand, due to economic problems caused by the pandemic, the need for affordable public transportation is also on the rise. Although we have some ideas for the new normal of public transportation, it still remains unclear how this area will evolve. For example, we don't know exactly how the increase in remote working will affect public transportation, or how micro-mobility vehicles will technologically evolve. But we know one thing for sure. From now on, public transportation should be hygiene and people-oriented. The solutions developed in response to the pandemic actually provide hints about the future of transportation. In Istanbul, we have tackled the issue of transportation through the following 6 points. Our first priority was to raise awareness about the pandemic. To this end, starting from March 2020, we ran campaigns about pandemic precautions through the urban areas and communication channels at our disposal. These campaigns still continue today to convince Istanbulites who are indecisive or hesitant about vaccination. Our second priority was to increase the hygiene standards of public transportation. To achieve this, a total of 100 stationary and mobile crews regularly disinfected transport vehicles in Istanbul. We provided masks free of charge to the drivers of the vehicles, while we monitored whether our citizens wear masks on public transportation vehicles and at bus stops. We also distributed hundreds of thousands of masks free of charge to commuters in Istanbul. We monitored passengers' temperatures through thermal cameras in metro stations and crowded bus stops. We launched a mobile application that allows us to track the health status of the drivers. We also set up a system that matches the personal information of citizens with their Istanbul cards, banning them from using public transportation if they are sick or infected with the virus. We added a remote sensor system to the accessible pedestrian button, which does not require a physical push to help pedestrians stay safe at crossings. We also made public transportation free of charge for all healthcare workers during the pandemic. Thirdly, we provided economic support to private sector entrepreneurs who are service providers in public transportation. We gave out staff and fuel subsidies to private, public, and sea transportation operators. By bringing privately owned city buses under the umbrella of the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, we secured the income of their owners and drivers. Next, we supported alternative transportation options in line with citizens' health concerns. For this purpose, increasing the share of bicycle and sea transportation has become our priority. In areas where public transportation is used for short distance journeys, we built pop-up bicycle routes. By investing in the smart bikes sharing system, we launched a program to double the number of bicycles and bike stops in Istanbul within 2 years. As sea transportation holds significant advantages to minimize the risk of COVID-19 transmission, we took steps to expand it in Istanbul. For example, we made it possible for citizens to use ferries for under 1 cent between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon during the summer months. We started manufacturing 50 sea taxis in our shipyard to be used in sea transportation. Fifth, we prioritized the design of parklet areas as pedestrian stops to encourage walking short distances. We can see that there will be a great demand in the coming period for these areas, which are designed to provide public spaces for the people where existing pavement widths are narrow. Sixth, we founded the Istanbul Transportation Platform to establish a participatory and inclusive vision for Istanbul in the field of transportation and to make it sustainable. The Istanbul Transportation Platform cares about stakeholder and citizen participation, and the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality undertakes the role of a facilitator for this platform to have a democratic and inclusive structure. We also aim to establish and activate mechanisms that reinforce the participation of commuters who are directly affected by transportation policies and practices. All these actions that we took show that public transportation will continue to be a very important topic in the coming days. Transportation is a subject that closely concerns the daily life of every citizen and every visitor in the city and covers all sectors from logistics to tourism, from industrial production to agricultural production. This issue grows even more complex with health and hygiene related concerns and increasing environmental sensitivity. Finding the right solutions in this intricate domain can only be possible with collective thinking and participatory models. Therefore, we have to maximize cooperation at all levels. This cooperation should not be confined only within the city, but it should take place between cities and nations too. Even though we live in different locations, we share a connected life on the same planet. While ending my words, I would like to thank Vice President of Infrastructure, Mr. Maktar Diop, for organizing this timely event. Thank you for listening and looking forward to a period of increased cooperation between our cities.
The Mayor of Istanbul in Turkey. Thank you, Mayor, for being part of session number 3, plenary session number 3, which concludes plenary session number 3. Thank you for watching, everybody.